So, welcome everyone to Stir It Up. This is Jerry Bill. I'm hosting the show for the Fresno Center for Nonviolence, second Wednesday of the month show. And I'm delighted today that we're going to have a special guest in our studio, Kehendi Salwazi. I'll introduce him in just a minute. But it's a very timely show today because it's going to relate to an important film that's happening this Friday down at the Tower Theater, a FilmWorks film. And the film is called I Am Not Your Negro. And it's going to be showed at the Tower Theater this Friday at 5:30 and again at 8:30 with sort of a panel discussion or film discussion after the first showing. And this is directed by Raoul Peck and narrated by actor Samuel Jackson, and is a very highly regarded film. And it's based on the work of James Baldwin, kind of putting today's racial issues into a somewhat of an historical context. So, and that's what we're going to be doing today with my guest, Kehendi Salwazi. Kehendi, I've known Kehendi for 47 years now because he and I both started teaching at Fresno City College back in 1970.
That's right.
And I've since retired, and Kehendi is partly retired, but is also still teaching part-time. So 47 years you've been in the teaching business.
I know. You better believe it.
Yeah. Well, you must love what you're doing.
Oh, it's not even a job. It's an opportunity.
It is an opportunity. That's how I thought of it, too. Kehendi is a graduate of the University of Chicago and the Art Institute of Chicago. Besides being a teacher of African American Studies at Fresno City College for these last 47 years, he's also an artist doing visual arts as part of what's called the Black Arts Movement, or that's what it was. That got started in the 1960s, I guess.
That's right.
And you also studied in San Diego, right?
Yeah, I got my master's from San Diego State.
From San Diego
University,
State.
yes.
Yeah. Okay, good. So there's a little bit about Kehendi's background, but I can tell you it was a pleasure working with him for those 47 years. Well, I wasn't there 47 years, but the time we were there together. Mm-hmm. And we worked on some sort of racial projects together.
We sure did.
A couple of different ones. And so we have very high regard for one another, and I'm really delighted to have him here in the studio with us.
Yeah, and I'm very happy to be here with you.
Well,
and
thank you.
Great deal of respect for you, Jerry.
Okay, well, that's mutual. Okay, well, we're living now in the era of the Black Lives Matter movement, for example. But of course, that didn't come out of a vacuum. There's historical background to all of that. Mm-hmm. And I just wanted to start with a little mention of some stirring up of racial hatred by the Donald Trump campaign. Mm-hmm. And this was back during the time of, before the general election and the time of the primaries.
Yes.
He sent out this tweet in which he claimed that 81% of white people in America who had been murdered were murdered by black people. Mm-hmm. Now, the actual figure is that 82% of white people murdered in America were murdered by other white people, not by black people.
That's right.
He just turned that.
He just makes lies up.
He makes stuff up. So why would anybody make this stuff up unless they're, well, I can only think of a couple of reasons. One is they're deliberately trying to stir up racial tensions.
And it worked.
And the other is, it's possible he didn't even believe it, but he thought it would appeal to the white supremacist hardcore right, and they say, here's our guy. He's quoting the statistics we want to hear.
That's right.
But of course, this has led to a lot of unfortunate stuff, including a big jump in hate crimes.
Yes.
And you probably know after just in the 10 weeks after the election, there were over 1,000 hate crimes.
I know.
In the U.S., a lot of them against Muslims, but also a very high percentage against African Americans.
Yes.
And also Latinos
and Muslims, people they perceive as
Muslims and or Sikhs and so on. Yeah,
exactly.
And of course, gay and lesbian and transgender people, all of them.
Right.
It's like all the people he targeted during his primary campaign are now being targeted by others,
and especially Jews.
And Jews.
He's really gone. I mean, it's.
Oh yeah.
It looks like Germany now. Where they're dealing with Jewish people.
Attacks on synagogues and Jewish
I would look at old Nazi films and Hitler and all of that.
Yeah.
And I just keep seeing. Some of the similar signs.
Right.
You know.
And it's not that he's directly sending those people out, but they're encouraged by the kind of rhetoric that he engages in.
Right.
So that's the world we live in. So we're in a time where, it seems to me, we're going backwards in race relations.
We are.
Okay, so this is a good time to think about the work of James Baldwin.
Yes.
And about what's transpired historically that led us to where we are. And so I'd like to hear your thoughts on that.
Yeah, James Baldwin was one of my favorite literary people in the 60s and 70s. I mean, anytime he made a speech or anything, I wanted to hear it. And I particularly like his book, The Fire Next Time.
All right.
And then I read Go Tell It on the Mountain, some of his other works, when he was in church and that whole religious experience he had and all of that. I even read Giovanni's Room of his gay lifestyle, all of that.
Right.
So I'm fairly familiar. And I just saw a video, The Price of a Ticket, very good video on his life and all of that.
Okay.
Very, very good. Yeah, so he's one of my heroes.
All right.
Yeah. James Baldwin's a master scholar, and most important of all, literary person. And that's part of the great 60s movement. It produced people like James Baldwin.
And it produced you.
Thank you. I'm not in it. I'm way at the bottom.
But from the same time period.
Yeah, that's my period. That's right. It's the period that my art is around, and all of that. Because it was a transformation.
It was
from what my parents and my elders around me had gone through for all their lives to this new civil rights movement, black power, all of that. It was very transformative for people like myself.
Of course, of course.
Because, I lived in the Jim Crow period as well as the post-Jim Crow period.
You grew up in Missouri, wasn't it?
Yes. In a very segregated, very racist state, community, etc.
Right.
I often think about McDonald's. When I see McDonald's, you can just go in and buy what you want.
Yeah.
And get you a hamburger.
Yeah.
At the front desk. When I got a hamburger, I had to go to the back.
You did.
And get it in a bag. So I remember that. Well, you couldn't go in.
You couldn't eat it inside.
That's right.
You had to take it away.
That's right. Oh no, I get arrested.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
So were you harassed by police?
Oh heavens, yes. Oh yeah. I mean I got a job. I was stopped by the police every night.
On your way home.
Walking home
from work.
Right. Walking home from work. Oh sure. Absolutely. I've been arrested 3 times in my life and never committed a crime. So I understand that the oppression that we have gone through as black people.
So an expression of the resistance to that is the current day Black Lives Matter movement.
Black Lives Matter, and a whole lot of other young people are beginning to look at our relationship generally to white people in general, and our relationship to the country. So it's a whole different movement coming now. People are beginning to go back to Malcolm X and Marcus Garvey, some of our greatest leaders, and begin to kind of look at America in a very different way than Dr. King and people like that. That whole civil rights period.
Mm-hmm.
And what makes that happen is the Trump election.
Right.
It was, this past yesterday, I think, it was Sunday when they had the anniversary of the Bloody Sunday.
Oh, yes, right, Pettus Bridge. Right.
Yes,
right.
yes. And then I saw members of our civil rights movement going to speak to Sessions. I think it was either this morning or yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
And talking to him was like talking to a wall. I mean, he didn't even respond for the most part to what they were asking and demanding, and et cetera, et cetera. And that, he's already have issued some very dangerous policies that he's not going to get involved, like police. The questions where the police have not acted democratically.
Mm-hmm.
He's not going to deal with the police on that. He's kind of giving the police chiefs full gears.
Yeah.
And that's what caused the Black Lives Matters movement for the first part. With the police is kind of a terrorist,
right?
In terms of our community.
Right. And of course that happened under Obama.
That happened under Obama. That's right.
But when Eric Holder was Attorney General, say what you will about Obama, but he the Civil Rights Division of the Justice Department really did its job.
That's exactly right.
During the Obama years, in terms of investigating police abuse in cities all around the country and putting them into under special observation and so on, a special review, because they were messing up, and and Eric Holder's Justice Department was actually doing, looking at that and looking at it strongly.
Right.
That's gone now.
I would say that if President Obama gave African Americans a big positive for our community, is what he did with the Justice Department. That is probably the most significant for us, because voting rights, everything that we struggle for, is kind of connected to the Justice Department. If we're dealing with police violence, or we're dealing with voting rights, or we're dealing with just generally civil rights, it's been the Justice Department that's been the holder up of those civil rights laws. Once the Justice Department stopped protecting those laws, then it's a free reign. We're back to Jim Crow again.
Right.
So I think that was the greatest gift that Obama gave African Americans.
And now we've got Attorney General Sessions.
That's the worst gift. That's the main thing. If you're a racist like Donald Trump, you really want to hurt African Americans, you put Sessions in control of the Justice Department.
Right. Because that's where it's going to hurt the most.
Well, very much so.
Yeah. Wow. Well, we're going to take just a little break here for a special announcement. But when we come back, I want you to talk a little bit about the young people of today and the African American community, and what you know about what their thinking is, and so on. But just right now, we're going to have a special announcement.
This is the KFCF Community Calendar. You can always find the calendar online at www.kfcf.org with lots more information. Here are some highlights.
Fresno Filmworks and Cineculture present a film that questions black representation in Hollywood and beyond. I Am Not Your Negro will be screened at the Tower Theater in Fresno at 5:30 and 8:30 p.m. on Friday, March 10th. Master filmmaker Raoul Peck's film, I Am Not Your Negro, is a journey into black history that connects the past of the civil rights movement and the lives and successive assassinations of Medgar Evers, Malcolm X, and Martin Luther King Jr. to the present and the Black Lives Matter movement. I Am Not Your Negro screens Friday, March 10th at 5:30 and 8:30 p.m. at the Tower Theater in Fresno. A post-screening discussion will take place after the early show. Visit FresnoFilmworks.org for tickets and more details.
To get your items listed on the KFCF Community Calendar, send them at least 2 weeks in advance to calendar@kfcf.org.
Okay, you're back to Stir It Up on KFCF 88.1 FM in Fresno, free speech radio for Central California. And we're delighted to have in the studio today Kehinde Solwazi, professor of African American Studies at Fresno City College. having been teaching there 47 years, and much of it full time, but now part time.
Right.
Yeah, and so just before we went to that announcement, I mentioned I wanted to talk about the young people. Let me ask you: are you going to go to this film on Friday?
I'm looking very much forward to it.
Okay.
Trying to get as many people to come as possible.
Yeah, good idea.
Yeah. Let me just say this. What we're looking at is the slavery.
Okay.
See, when I look at Trump and I look at all the races and all that, everything goes back to slavery, American chattel slavery, which is the most horrendous barbarity any other human beings have been ever subjected to.
Oh, yeah. It's not like classical slavery at
Oh,
all.
Lord, no.
Yeah.
It's, breeding women to sell their children. It's just so horrific
Right.
that Americans have not come to grips with that.
That's true.
And because they have not come to grips with slavery, they have not come to grips with as African people, African Americans, our humanity.
Uh-huh.
And one of the key things with chattel slavery is that we, as human beings, Africans, was reduced to chattel, and that's a form of non-human farm animals kind of stuff.
Right, property.
Property. And around that horrible crime was a just huge number of myths and lies and laws to reinforce this slavery, etc.
Mm-hmm.
And I look at it financially too, because after the Native Americans were literally removed from their land, the European settler community was caught in a situation where they had to make some money. It was all about making money to make the country viable, so they could have cash crop and develop, etc. The problematic with that is that they discovered that cotton, sugar, to a limited extent, tobacco, rice, could possibly create a cash economy for the growth of the country. So the whole country is founded on this, for the most part.
Right.
All the founding fathers were slave owners, much of them. And so that's the centrality of the United States. That's what people don't want to talk about.
Candy, I was taught that we were founded on liberty.
Well, liberty for the slaveholders.
Oh, yeah.
Not even the poor white folks. They were beat up too.
Right.
But they were given the illusion that they had white skin and all that mess. And so they would, at least they could buy them some slaves at some point if they, got rich.
Right.
So the centrality of the country not dealing with that reality.
Right.
Has led to this ideology of white supremacy. And unfortunately, the way they treated us gave them a kind of template on how they treat other people of color, how they treat the Native Americans, of course, how they treat the Latinos, Mexicans, generally any people of color, how they treat the Arabs.
Right.
The whole mindset is toward anybody that's not white and not Christian.
Right.
That's fair game. And that starts really before America was founded. It starts in Europe, and it starts with the popes and all of them in terms of sanctioning through Christianity the oppression of anybody that's not white and not Christian.
Right.
And so what we have is this ugly legacy that permeates American mindset in the country. And that when I look at Donald Trump and I look at what has just happened, that's the not spoken about truth of why we have a change in the country from one to the other. At some point, we have to come to grips with our history. At some point, we got to come to grips with truth, justice, and respect. That's we got to come to grips with that, or the country won't last. Now, I know they got plans to have a white nation. I listen to them. That's what they're talking about, a white nation.
Yeah.
I guess they're going to try to create a kind of apartheid South Africa kind of structure.
Right.
Well, that's not going to be That's going to be very difficult.
People aren't going to stand for that. No, you're right. People won't accept that.
No. Absolutely not. This is 21st century.
Right.
That age is really over.
Yeah.
And as we talk about African Americans, we will resist that. Of course, we can't. No, that's unacceptable.
And you would have allies in the white community that would be resisting it as well.
Sure,
yeah.
Absolutely. You see it right now.
Yeah, of course.
Sure.
Yeah.
But our community, we have to prepare for that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a lot of homework we have to do in our own community. We have to build families again, get married, create a community. All the loosey-goosey stuff we've been doing in the last 40 years, we got to move forward and create resources in our own economic development. So we are fortified as a community, and we can survive here. Our vulnerability right now is our lack of wealth, our lack of education, et cetera, et cetera. So we have to transform ourselves. It's an opportunity for African Americans to really become a truly free people in control of our own destiny. That's really where we're going right now. People who we can work with, we were welcome to work with. But in the final analysis, we got to love ourselves and build and create for ourselves. And that's where our young people are going, because it's the future's theirs anyway. I get such a pleasure working with young people.
Yeah, that's why I wanted to ask you about that, about the young people, because you do work with young people on a regular basis.
Yeah, very much so.
So what is your sense of their awareness of all of this?
Very much optimistic. As an elder, it's just a pleasure of being an elder and being a guide when I can be. And I find our young people are very, very progressive and open. Even some of the gangs and all that stuff. A lot of these young people now are coming home. And it's our job as elders and to become fathers to a lot of our young men, because of the disarray of the family and all of that. So this is a great opportunity for us to grow as a community. Get rid of some of those ugly statistics that I'm looking at all the time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We can't help but we see them.
Yeah.
So we have to change that. That would really mean our very survival in the country.
Wow.
It's having a viable, strong community.
Now, you were talking about the legacy of slavery.
Yes.
Which I'm quite aware of, but there's a lot of work being done now on the concept of intergenerational trauma, where people of one generation are terribly traumatized, and they end up with PTSD and all that sort of thing.
We have the same problem.
And how that affects the next and the next and the next generation.
Yes, exactly. We have that same problem as African Americans. We call it post-traumatic slave syndrome.
Right.
You couldn't go through the barbarity of slavery and come out normal. And then you're dealing with Jim Crow.
Right.
So we didn't have a chance for reparations and the chance to heal. We came under siege. The best kept secret in the country is what African Americans did after the end of slavery. What we did, we didn't get anything. You remember, we did have, and I have to say this, we did have some very positive Republicans. Thaddeus Stevens. What's the other one? I always put them together. Charles Sumner.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
They were abolitionists.
Yeah.
And they really tried to bring some form of justice to the freed slaves at that point in time.
So even though you didn't get 40 acres and a mule, you did have.
That's where we got the 14th, 13th Amendment.
The amendments.
Very. And by the way, we didn't get it, but it went through Congress. The 40 acres and a mule.
Right.
It got vetoed by arch racists, the Vice President Andrew Johnson.
Because of the assassination of Lincoln.
Right, exactly.
How different history might have been if Lincoln.
Exactly. Right. You're right, Jerry.
Yeah. And so you're just talking about the period between the Civil War and the beginning of Jim Crow, basically.
Yeah. Well, we're talking about, which is almost pretty close.
Yeah.
That period, African Americans took their meager resources and pulled together enough wealth amongst ourselves to create our own towns, our own communities, And we, at the end of the century, we had almost created 88 all-black towns and communities. And we created our own wealth. And I know you've heard of Black Wall Street.
Oh, yes.
That was like the crown jewel of black, self-sufficient black communities. It was Black Wall Street.
And this was like in the 1870s.
No, well, the Black Wall Street was actually destroyed in the 20s.
It lasted until then.
Right, exactly.
But it got started. When did it get started? Back about 1870s?
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
About that time. And along with that, with many, many black towns. And for the most part, we programmed ourselves to be self-sufficient.
Okay, well, this has been exciting to talk to you about this. But I've got to remind our listeners that we're in the middle of a pledge drive.
That's right.
And I know you and I were talking about that before the show. And it's our job to get listeners to call in and make a pledge, because this is, independent free speech radio for Central California, KFCF 88.1 FM.
That's right.
And we are completely financed by our listeners, listener-sponsored radio. We don't have government grants. We don't have corporate grants. We don't have underwriting. All we got is people out there sending their money because they like what we put on the air. So if you like what you're hearing and you like what KFCF does for, the Central Valley and the Central California, maybe now is the time to contribute. And you contribute here locally by calling 559-573-3350. I'll repeat that, 559-573-3350. And you can call and make a pledge there. Or you can go online to our website, which is kfcf.org, and you can pledge securely online. But that's what keeps us going. And a lot of people don't understand that we are an independent radio station here in Fresno. We're not tied really financially to KPFA in Berkeley, although we get a lot of programming from KPFA. But they are financed totally separately. You can donate to KPFA online or by the telephone there, but that money ends up coming back to us anyway by an agreement we have with KPFA. So KPFA is having some, the Pacifica Network is having some financial troubles right now, but we have to stay strong here locally so that whatever kind of storms happen with Pacifica, we'll be all right here.
Good.
So now it's it's important, more important than ever, that people pledge to us locally and help keep us afloat. And you've done it all these years, and we're going to keep going like this. So this this model really works, where just the people listening are the ones that financing this.
Yes, exactly.
And you know what that means? The only people we have to please are the listeners. We don't have to please any corporations. We don't have to please any government bureaucrats.
Right.
We don't have to please, rich people who say, well, I'll give you this amount of money.
But you got to say this.
You got to say that. None of that is required of us. We are free to say whatever. And so we can talk like you just did and sort of challenge white America about, we've got to come to terms with what's going on. History. Come to terms with history. You think something like a Truth and Reconciliation move?
We need all of that.
Something like they did in
South
Africa.
And the healing has to come with white people.
Yeah.
It's white people's problem.
I know, yeah.
So
and
this idea of race and color and all that nonsense, that has to be dealt with. And we have to teach that. That has to go in our schools. Our schools are not doing any of that.
No, they're not. Although you're doing it at City College.
Yeah, sure.
And I did it when I was there.
I know you did. I know you did.
Okay, well, we are running out of time here, so I'm going to remind you one more time that this station depends on local listeners supporting it. With any amount, our regular membership is $40 a year, but low income is $25 a year. Anything that you can contribute, we'd love to have. You can call us at 559-573-3350 or go to kfcf.org.